Here's Brody Brazil.
As I sit down and record this, there are a couple days left in 2022, but by the time you're watching this, we may only be hours away from 2023. And on that note, I wanted to bring up 5 themes specific to the San Jose Sharks for the upcoming calendar year. And yes, I realize the calendar year, like January to December, it involves 2 separate seasons for the Sharks, like the end of the current one we're witnessing right now, but also the start of the next year, the next campaign for Team Teal, which I imagine starts in early October. The schedule's not out yet, but you understand from January to December, it's going to be an interesting time and turning point, hopefully, for this franchise. So the 5 themes I'll bring up here, a lot of them are individually based, but by the end, we'll put them all together into a team aspect. And let's begin with San Jose's number 1 goalie. James Reimer is set to be an unrestricted free agent this summer. Signed the 2-year deal with San Jose before the start of last year. A lot of people thought maybe he wouldn't even make it to this year with this team, like he would be an enticing trade piece, but I'm glad he's here. He's provided stability, a backbone for this team, consistency for this team. I know you look at the team's overall results and sometimes how many goals they give up. I'm not putting a lot of that even on James Reimer. I think individually he has been, as expected, he has been really good. He also comes with a body of work over the course of his career, and actually, he's never really been that heavy workload number 1 type guy. I think last season, 48 or so starts. That was the most he'd ever made in a single season in his career. But you look at the numbers, a .282 goals against, a .912 save percentage. Yeah, he is a known commodity for sure, and definitely an enticing option for playoff-bound teams across the league that are shopping for goaltending security. Oh, what does that remind you of? The San Jose Sharks in 2016, kind of angling towards the playoffs. Doug Wilson went out and acquired some extra pieces, and James Reimer was a terrific backup goaltender to Martin Jones. And the Sharks didn't really need to use him in that stretch where they ultimately went to their first Stanley Cup final, but to know he was there, to also give Martin Jones a rest at the end of that season, James Reimer was huge for San Jose in just that short breath. And I understand a lot of teams are looking at him the same way the Sharks once looked at him. And so there's no question in my mind, he is an enticing option despite how the team has done this year because they know what James Reimer is all about. But that brings up a totally different question. If James Reimer is part of a trade, there are actually, 2 things to bring up here. Number 1, how much depth do the Sharks have in the short term, like in the near future, to sustain their goaltending efforts? Kaapo Kähkönen obviously around. He's also been signed to a multi-year deal that is expiring soon, but he is obviously in the fold. Aaron Dell in the picture, and a couple other Sharks goaltending prospects. I'm not here to, quite honestly, even know how the depth chart looks. A lot of times teams don't really reveal their cards. They keep them close to their chest. And why wouldn't they until they get called up and get an opportunity? I'm not really sure how the depth chart works and who might be considered for options and starts and playing time and all that stuff. But it does make you question, like, if you remove James Reimer, how deep enough is the Sharks' goaltending situation to be competent and successful, right, in the next couple years? It's not to say the Sharks don't have choices and options and names and a pipeline that they've been working on. It's just unclear who would get the first crack at it or starts or playing time. Again, Kaapo Kähkönen has been around, but even he contractually is not secured for the long term. So a lot in question in terms of what would come next for Sharks goaltending. And then the other part of this is, what value would you get out of a James Reimer trade? Essentially a rental. So you'd have to temper your expectations. A team might want him, but how much would they be willing to give up for him if it's only for a handful of weeks or months to get them over the hump in a playoff situation? But if you're going to get something out of it, right, this is how you would get something out of it in a James Reimer transaction. Okay, let's move on to Erik Karlsson. Wow, what a season. Like literally his best start to a year ever. And I say start, but we're almost halfway through with this campaign. We're almost at the 41-game mark. A 100-point pace plus, right? And that number kind of fluctuates depending on what he's done lately. As I record this right now, on a 10-game point streak, the longest of his career. So that question of, is Erik Karlsson back? Could he get back to form? I mean, like, he's literally better than form right now, right? He's never done this before. And I also understand that, as it relates to the Norris Trophy, first off, doesn't it go to the best defensive player at his position? And all of a sudden now, the Norris relies on how many points you get and what type of offensive player you are. But hey, offensive defensemen are among the most coveted style of player in the league. So there shouldn't be like any question of what is sexy, what works in this league, and what is desired in this league. And that player, as an offensive D-man, should probably be up for the Norris more often than not. I'm just here to say that some people will maybe pencil Karlsson out only because of the team's overall success or lack of it, and also maybe due to his plus-minus, which I realize is not as impressive considering how many points he's already put up this year. But those are all like team aspects as it relates to literally this individual award. And so from my perspective, and in my opinion, Erik Karlsson has to be up for the Norris. If he's going to flirt with a 100-point season for the first time, and would it be like 3+ decades or so in the NHL from a D-man, you have to at least keep him in the conversation. I'm not even here to say certified winner already, but if he continues, on this pace, unaltered from this pace, gotta be at least a favorite for that trophy and that award. But here's the big deal about Erik Karlsson, right? We can marvel over the success, and I will continue doing that. It's one of the best Sharks individual efforts ever, or at least in recent years. But everybody wants to bring up his future with the team, right? And that's one of my topics here, present versus the future. Yeah, what he's doing here in the present is phenomenal. And without him, where would the Sharks be as a team? Like, really struggling, no question about it. He's providing offense and assists and playmaking to a team that honestly doesn't have as many playmakers and finishers as they would like. But he's also a huge puzzle piece. The contract, when I say he is, it's really the contract. And for another team to be interested in having his services, like, there's no question that's definitely the case. Who would not want somebody like this playing how he is right now? There's no question about it. But it's a hard piece to move. It's a hard puzzle piece to fit. Like, if I have a puzzle I'm working on and you have a puzzle you're working on, my piece, it's one of those 5,000-piece puzzle pieces. It's got a lot of angles, and it's hard to figure out exactly how I could hand this to you and it would fit in your puzzle also. And so look, that's nothing against Karlsson. That's nothing against any other team in the league. That's just a business situation and the way it is. Would any team want him right now? Yes. Do the San Jose Sharks want him right now? Yes. But they also realize that they are very much constrained under the hard salary cap. And so, why not consider the options if, in fact, there are options? I'm not here to create rumors or speculate in this conversation even farther than I already have, which I feel like is more than normal. So I'm just here to say that it is an interesting theme of Karlsson. Can he, number one, continue what he's been doing in the present? That would be awesome. But number two, what does the future hold for number 65? San Jose? Somewhere else? How would it even get done? There's a lot of questions there, and this will continue, but I'll be keeping my eye on it. Okay, Timo Meier is up next. Another incredible pace, another career pace for a different player. He's been the recipient of a lot of those Erik Karlsson assists. Timo now on a 40-goal pace, and as I record this, he is on his third career 5-game goal streak. Ooh, that's a lot of words. But it's also his second 5-game goal streak of this season alone. So think about this. 2018, his first 5-game goal streak. Then he went without it for a couple years, and here he is in 22. 5 games in a row with a goal for the second time this season. Now, he's in a different situation. His contract expiring, he'll be a restricted free agent this summer, meaning that if he does get opened up and exposed to this, other teams can make him an offer, and they will get to take him contractually if the Sharks do not match that offer. So the Sharks have control over this situation until and if he ever becomes a restricted free agent. So that's kind of why I'm bringing up the March 3rd deadline here. And it's not to say that the Sharks absolutely need to have ink and signatures on paper and all this handshaked and locked away by March 3rd. But they need to have a really good idea of what exactly is going to happen for sure, how it's going to happen, how it's going to play out. Like, they really need to have their ducks in a row, so to speak. They need to have this all lined up by March 3rd to know. Otherwise, you're either going to expose Timo Meier to being an RFA or not, right? And keep him and contractually sign him, or maybe he's a trade piece again. But you kind of need to know what you're going to do by that date. Now, we have some time before March 3rd, and Timo is playing well, which creates a lot more conversation, maybe even creates more opportunity. He's having 2 really good seasons back-to-back. And I'll tell you this, I loved the turnaround in his game when Bob Bugner and the coaching staff approached him. They kind of gave him the hard sell of like, you've got to make strides here. We've got a lot of belief in you. We know what you're capable of. We haven't seen it. And then all of a sudden, Timo shows it to you over and over on a consistent basis, has become a bona fide goal scorer in this league. I'm just saying the Sharks need to know what they're going to do with him, keep him, or have the ability to keep him by March 3rd, or understand that the trade deadline is March 3rd. He would need to be moved before then. But as it relates to a lot of different things, and I'll present this in Timo's situation here too, the Sharks are under tight cap space right now. They don't have a lot of flexibility at present to add to, their salary because they're already up against the cap. And next year, I think it's only going up $1 million or so. So there's not going to be that built-in flexibility. And there's not a lot of money, I don't think, coming off the books for next year, not a huge contract coming off it, to make up even more room for a Timo Meier next deal. So you got to do something here. When I say you must get the value, you either have to keep and capture the value of Timo Meier, like retain him because he's an RFA. You need to capture that value, or you need to go out and get some value in return for Timo Meier. And I hate sitting here talking about trading players, especially players, but more importantly, people I actually like. I hate this. But from a business-only perspective, and everybody knows it, this is the way it's got to go for San Jose. Okay, a couple more things here to touch on in terms of big Sharks themes, 5 of them for 2023. Mike Grier's first full season, that's probably the best way to put it. He's already been through 1 draft, but he literally parachuted into it like on the first week of the job. But what's he going to be at this first deadline of his general managing career? How active of sellers could the Sharks be? They've got a lot of veteran players. They've got a lot of players who other teams would know what to expect from them. They've got a lot of players on pretty good contractual deals. So there are some options, but how exactly active will the Sharks be? Because this has not been in their norm for a long time. It was not the way that Doug Wilson ever even had to operate. He was always a buyer at the deadline. So when I say active, I think that's no question, but how active will the Sharks be by the deadline? Will there be any wow moves? I talked about James Reimer before. That is the caliber of a wow move, although it would not be completely surprising at all. It's like a, whoa, James Reimer no longer on the team. That drastically impacts them here and now. What did they get for James Reimer? Obviously, I just mentioned Karlsson or Timo Meier. Those are all wow moves. Any player who, creates some waves with their departure, those are all wow moves. Are there any of those in store? And would they open up some salary cap flexibility for San Jose? Also, as we look at the end of this season and at the beginning of next season, and I'll talk more about this in our next slide, Barracuda promotions, right? You've got a team down there that's playing a little bit better than .500 hockey. You've got some individuals who are scoring a bunch of goals, putting up a bunch of points, playing well, being highly touted and still highly looked at. So at what point is it the right time for those promotions? As of right now, there's not really a spot on the San Jose roster, but you get through some trades, hopefully not a lot of injuries the rest of this season, but what opportunities roster-wise even exist? If not, by the way, for the start of next year. Now, that's a whole totally different picture. That's one summer later. You would expect by next year, the Eklunds, the Bordelos, if they haven't made it up by this year, that the start of next year might bring that opportunity. Also, Grier's going to go through a big draft. It's not his first draft, to be clear, but a big draft. And you know who the number 1 name is out there. And quite honestly, a lot of us think we pretty much know who the number 2 name is. But the top 5, honestly, of this draft class looks quite swell, looks quite productive. And if the Sharks are anywhere in that top 5 mix of a draft pick, I mean, they're going to get a player that in probably a couple years is ready to make an impact. If it's Fantelli or if it's Bedard, I mean, maybe more of a sooner impact. I mean, how NHL ready are they? I don't know. I think a lot of teams want to find that out. But the last big thing here is cap restraints for the Sharks. I mean, they are seriously up against this in the tune of maybe 5 figures of cap space at this point right now, of how much flexibility they actually have. So anything Mike Grier does is going to come with a bit of the handcuffs in salary cap ability and things he would like to do but maybe can't do. So just understand that Mike Grier's first full season comes with an agenda, but also comes with some challenges that are inherently built into the Sharks salary structure. So yeah, his first full year, we're going to witness that during 2023. And also this is the last point I want to make here. There's going to be 2 pivotal times for the Sharks. Right after that March 3rd deadline, basically March, most of that month, and whatever remains in April of the regular season, but also October, when the Sharks debut a likely different team and the start of a brand new season. We're obviously post-deadline likely to see something else. We're likely to see a team that may not feature all of the same players it does right now. I think by spring of 23, yeah, the Sharks could look different. How drastic? It's my last point here. Drastically different? I don't know. How about some moves the team will make this summer? How many moves could they make? It depends on, obviously, salary cap flexibility. What type of promotions will we see from the AHL or any other place in San Jose's pipeline? So the 2 times for change, right? It's going to be right after the deadline of this year and however the team looks at the start of next year. I mean, you could literally be looking at 3 different versions of the Sharks. How they come out on January 1st, like literally on New Year's Day when they skate in Chicago. How they look then, you could take a snapshot of that. You could take a snapshot of what's their first game after March 3rd. Is it the 4th or the 5th or whatever? But how they look on that game, and then how they look opening night of 2023-24. Those could be 3 entirely different looking snapshots of teams. And again, that's the point I want to make here. The drastic changes that we see from one to the next to the next. And honestly, if you're in this to get the wheels moving and to get, the ship turned around and moving forward in the right direction, at some point, you're going to need to see a sequence of probably drastic change. I don't say that lightly, and I don't say that with any pleasure. I don't like to see turnover or transition, but at some point, I think to get different results, you probably have to try new things. So those are my 5 themes for the Sharks. Here's as we approach 2023. It's going to be a pivotal year, no question about it. Obviously, the last year brought tons of change, literally all the way up and down the line, from coaching to the front office and some players on the ice. But I would expect that 23, by the time it's over, might bring some similar transition and hopefully the start of some success. So let me know what you think about all those 5 themes in the comments section below. Don't forget to subscribe and thumbs up on this video if you actually enjoyed it.